Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he checked his scanner one more time. The device beeped softly, showing the same reading it had shown for the past 3 hours. The crystal formations in this part of Haven Valley were unlike anything he had seen before. As a scientist studying alien life forms, Marcus had traveled to many worlds, but this planet kept surprising him. The mining colony where he worked was small. Most people there were miners who dug deep into the ground looking for valuable metals. Marcus was different. He studied the strange plants and animals that lived on this world. His job was to make sure the mining operations would not harm any important life forms. The sun was getting low in the sky. Marcus knew he should head back to his research station soon. The valley could be dangerous at night. The other colonists often talked about strange creatures that lived in the deep parts of the canyons. They called them valley devils and told scary stories about hunters who never came back. Marcus did not believe most of these stories. In his experience, fear made people imagine things that were not real. He had been working alone in the outer areas of the valley for 6 months. He had never seen anything more dangerous than a small lizard-like creature that ate the local plants. A sound made him look up from his scanner. It was not the wind. It was not the usual noise of rocks falling in the canyon. This sound was different. It was low and deep, almost like someone in pain. Marcus followed the sound toward a group of tall crystal rocks. The sound came again, weaker this time. He walked carefully around the crystals and stopped. What he saw made him forget to breathe for a moment. A creature lay on the ground between the rocks. It was huge, at least 8 feet tall, even lying down. Its skin was covered in scales that seemed to change color as Marcus watched. Right now, the scales were dark red, almost black. The creature had 6 limbs that ended in sharp claws. Its head was large, with eyes that glowed amber in the fading light. Those eyes were looking right at Marcus. The creature was badly hurt. Marcus could see at least 3 holes in its side where someone had shot it with plasma rifles, the kind of weapons the hunting parties used. Blood that looked almost purple pooled beneath the creature's body. Marcus knew he should run. He should call for help. The colony rules were clear about unknown life forms. Report them immediately. Do not make contact. Let the security team handle any dangerous situations. But Marcus could not move. The creature's eyes held him. There was intelligence there, not just animal awareness, but real thought, real understanding, and pain. So much pain. The creature tried to lift its head. The effort made it make that low sound again. It was definitely a sound of suffering. The creature's eyes never left Marcus's face. It was not showing anger or trying to threaten him. It looked like it was asking for something. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. He slowly took off his backpack and pulled out his medical kit. Every scientist working in dangerous areas carried basic medical supplies. Marcus had supplies that could help with serious wounds. He had never thought he would use them on an alien creature. "Easy," Marcus said softly, even though he had no idea if the creature could understand human speech. "I want to help you." The creature's eyes followed every movement as Marcus came closer. Its scales shifted to a lighter color, more brown than red. Marcus hoped that meant it was becoming less afraid. Marcus knelt beside the creature and opened his medical kit. The plasma wounds were deep but had already stopped bleeding heavily. The creature's body seemed to be trying to heal itself, but it needed help. Working carefully, Marcus cleaned each wound with antiseptic solution. The creature made small sounds but did not try to move away or attack. Marcus used synthetic skin patches to cover the wounds. These patches would help the healing process and prevent infection. The hardest part was giving the creature pain medicine. Marcus had to inject it directly into the creature's blood system. He found a good spot on the creature's arm and slowly pushed the needle in. The creature's muscles tensed, but it held still. "That should help with the pain," Marcus said. He sat back and looked at his work. The patches were holding well. The creature's breathing seemed easier now. Marcus realized he had been working for over 2 hours. The sun had set completely. His research station was still a 30-minute walk away, and he did not like traveling in the dark. But he could not leave the creature alone. Not yet. He set up his portable light and made a small camp next to the creature. Marcus ate his dinner while the creature watched him. Sometimes the creature's eyes would close for a few minutes, but they always opened again to check that Marcus was still there. During the long night, Marcus studied the creature more carefully. Its scales did change color with what seemed to be emotions or physical state. When the pain medicine started working, the scales became a softer blue-green color. When the creature seemed to be sleeping, they turned almost silver. The creature's claws looked dangerous, but Marcus noticed they were also very precise tools. The creature could probably use them to manipulate objects with great skill. Its hands had what looked like thumbs, which meant it could grip and use tools like humans did. Most interesting of all were the creature's eyes. They tracked everything Marcus did with obvious intelligence. When Marcus moved his medical kit, the creature's eyes followed it. When Marcus wrote notes on his tablet, the creature watched the movements of his hands. This was not just a smart animal. This was something much more. When the sun started to rise, the creature began to move. The pain medicine and the medical patches had done their work. The creature could stand up, though it moved carefully to avoid opening its wounds. It looked down at Marcus for a long moment. Then it did something that made Marcus's heart race. The creature reached out one clawed hand and very gently touched Marcus's shoulder. It was clearly a gesture of thanks. Then the creature turned and walked away toward the deep canyon systems. It moved quietly for something so large. Within minutes, it had disappeared among the rocks and shadows. Marcus packed up his equipment and started the walk back to his research station. He had a report to write, but he knew he would not tell the truth about what had happened. The colony security team would want to hunt down the creature. They would see it as a threat that needed to be eliminated. Marcus had looked into those intelligent amber eyes. He knew the truth. This creature was not a monster. It was someone who had been hurt and needed help. Someone who understood kindness and gratitude. As Marcus reached his station, he made a decision. He would protect this secret, and if possible, he would protect the creature too. He had no idea that this decision would change the fate of every human in Haven Valley. 2 months passed since Marcus found the wounded creature in the crystal formations. He had almost convinced himself it had been a strange dream. Almost, but not quite. Sometimes, late at night, he would remember those amber eyes and the gentle touch of a clawed hand on his shoulder. Marcus continued his research work in the outer areas of Haven Valley. The colony administrators were happy with his reports about the local ecosystem. He had found several new plant species and documented the behavior of small animals. Everything seemed normal and safe for the mining operations. But strange things started happening around Marcus's research station. The first incident was small. Marcus had left some equipment outside during a windstorm. The weather on this planet could be harsh. Winds strong enough to throw a person off their feet were common in the valley. Marcus expected to find his equipment scattered and damaged when the storm passed. Instead, he found everything carefully placed behind a large rock that blocked the wind. The equipment was not just protected. It was arranged in neat rows, sorted by size and type. Marcus stared at the careful arrangement for several minutes. The wind did not organize things. Animals did not stack scientific instruments in perfect order. Someone had been there. Marcus checked the ground around his station for tracks. The rocky ground was hard to read, but he found some markings. They looked like they might have been made by large claws, but the wind and rain had washed away most details. Marcus decided to set up a motion sensor camera. If something was visiting his station, He wanted to know what it was. But the next morning, he found the camera carefully dismantled, not broken or destroyed, taken apart piece by piece, and the parts arranged in a neat pile. Someone had studied how the camera worked and then taken it apart without damaging any pieces. The second incident happened a week later. Marcus was studying a particular type of crystal that only formed in certain conditions. He needed samples from deep inside the canyon, but a recent earthquake had made the area too dangerous to explore. The rocks were loose and could fall at any time. Marcus went to bed disappointed. His research would have to wait until the area was safe again. He woke up to find 6 perfect crystal samples sitting outside his station door. They were exactly the type he needed, and they were arranged on a flat rock like an offering. Each crystal was clean and undamaged. Someone had gone into the dangerous area and carefully collected samples for him. Marcus looked toward the canyon where the samples had come from. For just a moment, he thought he saw a large shadow move behind the rocks, but when he looked more carefully, there was nothing there. Over the following weeks, the mysterious help continued. Broken equipment would be repaired overnight with a skill that impressed Marcus. The repairs were not just functional, they were artistic. Whoever was doing this work understood both the technical aspects of the equipment and had an eye for beauty. When Marcus needed water samples from a stream that had dried up, he found containers of the water waiting for him. When he was looking for a particular type of plant that grew in dangerous cliff areas, he found specimens carefully placed where he could easily find them. Someone was watching him. Someone understood his work and wanted to help him succeed. Marcus started leaving things for his mysterious helper. First, he left medical supplies near the crystal formations where he had found the wounded creature. The supplies were always gone by morning, so Marcus left more. Bandages, antiseptic, pain medicine, all of it disappeared. He also started leaving food. Not human food, but some of the local plants he had discovered were safe to eat. These disappeared too. Marcus began to feel like he was feeding a friend he had never actually met. The strangest part was how safe Marcus felt in areas where other colonists were afraid to go. Other researchers complained about feeling watched in the deep canyon areas. Some reported equipment going missing or strange sounds in the night. But Marcus never felt threatened. He felt protected. Meanwhile, the hunting parties in the valley were having unusual experiences. Viktor Kozlov was the colony's best hunter and the leader of the security team. He had been tracking what he called a major predator for months. Viktor was sure there was something large and dangerous living in the canyon systems. The evidence was everywhere, but the creature itself remained hidden. Viktor's team found tracks that suggested something much larger than any known animal on the planet. They found marks on trees and rocks that looked like claw marks, but the marks were too precise and deliberate to be random scratches. Most disturbing to Viktor were the incidents with his hunting traps. Viktor was an expert at setting traps. He had been hunting dangerous animals on 3 different worlds. His traps were sophisticated and effective, but something was dismantling his traps, not destroying them, taking them apart. Viktor would return to find his snares completely disassembled, with every piece arranged in neat piles. Electronic trap components would be taken apart so carefully that Viktor could reassemble them without damage, but the traps would be useless until he put them back together. "It's studying our technology," Viktor told his team during one of their planning meetings. "Whatever this thing is, it's learning how our equipment works." The other hunters nodded nervously. They had all seen the dismantled traps. They had all felt like they were being watched while working in the deep canyon areas. "Maybe it's not aggressive," suggested Maria Santos, one of Viktor's most experienced hunters. "It's never actually attacked anyone. It just seems curious about our equipment." Viktor shook his head. "A predator this smart and this large is dangerous whether it attacks or not. It's learning our capabilities. That means it's planning something." But the hunters never saw the creature clearly. Sometimes they would catch glimpses of movement in their peripheral vision. Sometimes they would hear sounds that suggested something large moving through the rocks. But whenever they turned to look directly, there was nothing there. Some of the hunters reported finding their camps rearranged during the night, not disturbed or ransacked, but improved. Equipment would be moved to better positions. Supplies would be organized more efficiently. One hunter woke up to find that someone had repaired a tear in his tent with materials that did not come from human supplies. "It's like it's trying to help us," Maria said after finding her camp mysteriously improved for the third time. "Predators don't help their prey," Victor replied, but he sounded less certain than before. Marcus heard about these incidents from other colonists. He began to understand that his mysterious helper was interacting with other humans too. But while the hunters saw a potential threat, Marcus knew the truth. The creature he had helped was still out there, still recovering, and still grateful for the kindness it had received. Marcus started walking longer distances from his research station. He hoped to catch another glimpse of the creature, maybe even make direct contact again. He left food and supplies in places where he thought the creature might find them. He even left written notes, though he had no idea if the creature could read human writing. One evening, Marcus was working late at his computer when he heard a sound outside. It was the same low, deep sound he had heard that first night among the crystals. But this time it did not sound like pain. It sounded like a greeting. Marcus went to his door and looked outside. At first, he saw nothing. Then, movement caught his eye. A large shape stood on top of a rock formation about 100 yards away. The shape was too far away to see clearly, but Marcus knew what it was. The creature stood there for several minutes, clearly visible against the starry sky. Then it made that low sound again, softer this time, and disappeared into the darkness. Marcus smiled. His patient was doing well, more than well. The creature was thriving, and it was letting Marcus know that it remembered their first meeting with gratitude. Neither Marcus nor the creature knew that Victor had also heard that sound. Victor was setting a new trap in a canyon near Marcus's research station. The hunter's eyes narrowed as he listened to the strange call echoing off the canyon walls. "Tomorrow," Victor whispered to himself, "I'm going to get a closer look at you." The peaceful days of secret friendship were about to come to an end. Victor Kozlov studied the map spread across his desk one more time. Red marks showed every location where his team had found evidence of the creature. Blue marks showed where traps had been dismantled. Green marks showed the strange incidents where equipment had been repaired or camps had been reorganized. The pattern was clear. All of the activity centered around one area. Marcus Chen's research station sat right in the middle of the creature's territory. "It's been watching the scientist," Victor told his team. "Maybe using him as a way to study human behavior." Victor had worked as a hunter and security officer for 15 years. He had tracked dangerous predators on multiple worlds. In his experience, intelligent predators were the most dangerous kind. They learned, they adapted, and they planned attacks. "Sir," Maria Santos said carefully, "we still have no evidence that this creature is actually dangerous. It's never hurt anyone." Victor looked at her with frustration. "Maria, this thing is 8 feet tall with claws that can cut through metal. It's smart enough to study our technology and patient enough to watch us for months. Do you really want to wait until it decides to stop being curious and start being hungry?" The other team members nodded. When Victor explained it that way, the creature did sound threatening. Even Maria had to admit that something that large and intelligent could be dangerous if it chose to be. "What's the plan?" asked Jake Morrison, Victor's demolitions expert. Victor pointed to the map. "We set up a perimeter around Chen's research station. The creature has been visiting that area regularly. We use motion sensors, energy nets, and sonic dampeners to create a trap zone. When the creature comes to check on Chen, we capture it." "What about Chen?" Maria asked. "Does he know about this operation?" Victor shook his head. Chen is a scientist, not a soldier. If he knows we're coming, he might do something that alerts the creature. We need the element of surprise. Victor's plan was thorough and professional. His team had military-grade equipment designed for capturing large, dangerous animals. Energy nets could stop a creature the size of a small vehicle. Sonic dampeners would disorient the creature and make it easier to control. Motion sensors would detect any movement and trigger the trap automatically. The team spent 2 days setting up their equipment in the rocky areas around Marcus's research station. They worked during the day when Marcus was away collecting samples. By evening, everything was ready. Victor positioned his team at strategic points around the trap zone. Each hunter had a plasma rifle and communications equipment. If something went wrong with the automated systems, they were prepared to handle the situation manually. "Remember," Victor said over the radio, "we want this creature alive if possible. Dead specimens are less useful for study. But if it becomes too dangerous to handle, use whatever force is necessary to protect yourselves and the colony." Marcus returned to his research station just as the sun was setting. He noticed that some rocks looked like they had been moved recently, but he did not think much about it. The valley's geological activity often shifted loose stones around. Marcus heated up his dinner and sat down to review the day's work. He had found some interesting bacterial samples that might have medical applications. The colony's biomedical team would be excited to study them. Around midnight, Marcus heard the familiar sound from outside. The low, deep call that he had learned to recognize as a greeting from his mysterious friend. Marcus smiled and went to his door to look outside. The creature stood on its usual rock formation, clearly visible in the moonlight. But tonight something seemed different. The creature's posture looked more alert than usual. Its head turned from side to side as if it was sensing something wrong. Marcus stepped outside his station. "Is everything okay?" he called softly, even though he knew the creature probably could not understand his words. The creature made a different sound. Shorter and sharper than usual, it sounded like a warning. That was when Victor's motion sensors detected the creature's presence and activated the trap. Energy nets shot out from hidden positions in the rocks. Bright blue electricity crackled as the nets formed a cage around the creature. Sonic dampeners activated with a high-pitched whine that made Marcus cover his ears in pain. But the trap was not perfect. The creature was faster and smarter than Victor had expected. The creature analyzed the situation in seconds. Instead of panicking or fighting randomly, it moved with purpose and intelligence. It used its claws not as weapons, but as tools. The creature found the weak points in the energy nets and systematically disconnected them. "Target is dismantling the primary containment," Victor shouted into his radio. "All units move to secondary positions." The hunters moved in from their hiding places, but the creature was ready for them. It had learned about human tactics by watching them for months. It knew how they moved, how they thought, how they fought. The creature picked up large rocks and threw them with incredible accuracy, not at the hunters, but at their equipment. Rifles were knocked out of hands, communication devices were smashed, light sources were destroyed, plunging parts of the area into darkness. "It's targeting our gear, not us!" Maria called out over the chaos. "It's trying to disable us, not kill us!" But Victor was not listening to Maria's observations. He was focused on the fact that his carefully planned operation was falling apart. The creature was making his trained security team look like amateurs. "Use lethal force," Victor ordered. "This thing is too dangerous to capture." Several hunters raised their plasma rifles toward the creature, but before they could fire, something unexpected happened. Marcus Chen ran between the hunters and the creature. "Don't shoot!" Marcus yelled. "It's not attacking you. It's defending itself." Victor stared at Marcus in shock. "Chen, get away from that thing. It's a dangerous predator." "No, it's not," Marcus replied. "I've been studying it for months. It's intelligent and peaceful. It's never hurt anyone." The creature moved to stand behind Marcus, not hiding, but clearly positioning itself to show that the human was under its protection. The creature's scales had turned a deep blue color that Marcus had learned meant determination and protectiveness. "You've been studying it?" Victor could not believe what he was hearing. "Chen, that thing could kill you in seconds." "It saved my life 3 times," Marcus said firmly. "It repaired my equipment during storms. It brought me research samples from areas too dangerous for humans to reach. It's been protecting me, not threatening me." The hunters looked back and forth between Marcus and the creature. The situation made no sense based on their assumptions about dangerous predators. Predators did not protect humans. They did not repair equipment or bring gifts. "Sir," Maria said quietly, "maybe we should reconsider our approach here." Victor's face was red with anger and embarrassment. "That thing destroyed military equipment and made our security team look incompetent. It's dangerous whether it's protecting Chen or not." The creature made another sound. This one was different from anything Marcus had heard before. It was complex, with multiple tones and harmonics. It sounded almost like language. "What was that?" Jake whispered. Marcus listened carefully to the fading echoes of the sound. "I think it was calling for help." Victor raised his plasma rifle toward the creature. "I don't care what it was calling for. This ends now." But before Victor could pull the trigger, answering calls came from the canyon walls around them. The same complex harmonic sounds, but coming from multiple directions. Many directions. The hunters looked around nervously as the calls grew louder and more numerous. Whatever the creature had summoned, it was big, and there were many of them. "Sir," Maria said urgently, "I recommend we withdraw and regroup back at the main colony." Victor kept his rifle pointed at the creature, but his hands were shaking slightly. "We're not retreating from one animal." "Sir," Jake added, "I don't think it's just one animal anymore." The harmonic calls were getting closer. The hunters could hear movement in the rocks around them. Large movements. Multiple creatures moving with coordination and purpose. The creature standing behind Marcus made one more call. This one was clearly a command. The answering calls stopped immediately, but the sensation of being surrounded did not go away. Marcus looked up at the creature. In the remaining light from the hunter's equipment, he could see that its scales had turned silver. Earlier, Marcus had thought silver meant the creature was sleeping. Now he realized it meant the creature was calm and in control of the situation. "Victor," Marcus said carefully, "I think we need to talk about this. All of us, before someone gets hurt." Victor looked around at his team. His hunters were trained professionals, but they were clearly nervous about being surrounded by unknown creatures in the dark. His elaborate trap had not only failed, it had revealed that the humans were dealing with something much more complex than they had understood. "Fall back to the research station," Victor ordered. "We'll set up a defensive perimeter and call for backup from the main colony." As the hunters moved toward Marcus's research station, the creature followed at a distance. It did not approach the humans directly, but it made sure they could see it. The message was clear. The creature was watching everything that happened to Marcus. Victor had wanted to capture one dangerous predator. Instead, he had discovered that the humans were sharing Haven Valley with an entire species of intelligent beings. Beings who had been studying human behavior for months and who were now ready to respond to any threat against their friend. The hunt was over. But something much more complicated was about to begin. Victor Kozlov sat in the colony's main conference room, facing the 3 people who controlled life on Haven Valley. Colony Administrator Sarah Walsh, Mining Director Robert Kim, and Chief Medical Officer Dr. Elizabeth Harper listened as Victor gave his report about the previous night's events. "So you're telling me," Administrator Walsh said slowly, "that Dr. Chen has been in contact with an unknown alien species for months, and he never reported it?" "That's correct," Victor replied. Chen admits he's been studying the creature and accepting help from it. He claims it's peaceful, but it demonstrated tactical intelligence that makes it extremely dangerous. Director Kim leaned forward in his chair. How dangerous are we talking about? It dismantled military-grade capture equipment like it understood exactly how each component worked, Victor said. It coordinated with other members of its species using complex communication. And it showed protective behavior toward Chen that suggests these creatures form emotional bonds with humans. Dr. Harper looked thoughtful. Emotional bonds aren't necessarily dangerous, Victor. They could be beneficial for establishing peaceful relations. Victor shook his head firmly. Dr. Harper, with respect, this isn't about peaceful relations. This is about security. These creatures are intelligent, organized, and they've been studying our colony without our knowledge. That makes them a potential threat regardless of their current behavior. Administrator Walsh rubbed her forehead. She had been managing frontier colonies for 10 years, and she knew that first contact situations were always complicated. But this situation was worse than usual because it had been hidden from the colonial government. Where is Dr. Chen now? Walsh asked. Confined to quarters pending investigation, Victor replied. I have guards posted to make sure he doesn't try to make contact with the creatures again. And the creatures themselves? Unknown. After the incident last night, they retreated into the deep canyon systems. But we know they're still out there. My sensors detected movement in at least 12 different locations around the research station area. Administrator Walsh made her decision. I'm declaring a code red security alert. All non-essential personnel are to remain in the main colony area. No one goes into the outer valleys without military escort. She activated her communication console and sent a priority message to the Colonial Defense Force headquarters on the nearest settled world. I'm requesting immediate military support. A full battalion with heavy equipment. Dr. Harper looked alarmed. Sarah, isn't that an extreme response? We don't know that these creatures are hostile. Dr. Harper, Walsh replied, we have an unknown alien species with demonstrated intelligence and technology living in our mining territory. They've been watching us for months without making contact through proper channels. Whether they're hostile or not, this situation is beyond our capability to handle with colony security alone. Victor nodded approvingly. This was the kind of decisive leadership that frontier colonies needed. The military response team should arrive within 72 hours. Until then, my team will maintain defensive positions around the main colony. What Victor and the colonial administrators did not know was that their conversation was being listened to by someone who understood every word. Marcus Chen sat in his confined quarters, but he was not alone. Outside his window, barely visible among the rocks, a familiar shape watched and waited. The creature Marcus had saved months ago had learned to understand human speech by listening to Marcus work. It had also learned to read human body language and emotional states. The creature understood that Marcus was in trouble because he had helped an injured alien. It understood that the other humans were afraid and planning to bring soldiers. Most importantly, it understood that this fear could lead to violence that would hurt both species. The creature made a series of low calls that carried through the rocks around the colony. The calls were too quiet for human ears to detect, but they carried complex information to other members of its species. The message was simple. The kind human is in danger. The other humans are preparing for war. It is time to reveal the truth. Marcus heard the calls and recognized them as communication, even though he could not understand the meaning. He went to his window and saw the creature among the rocks. Marcus placed his hand against the glass and mouthed the word, friend. The creature's scales turned the warm blue-green color that Marcus had learned, meant affection and gratitude. Then the creature disappeared into the canyon systems to join its people. 2 days later, the Colonial Defense Force arrived with enough firepower to level a small city. Colonel James Mitchell commanded a battalion of professional soldiers who specialized in alien threat response. His soldiers carried plasma artillery, energy shields, and atmospheric aircraft designed for ground support. Colonel Mitchell met with the colonial leadership to assess the situation. Administrator Walsh, I've reviewed the reports about your alien contact situation. My recommendation is immediate pacification, followed by comprehensive study of the species. What does pacification involve? Dr. Harper asked. We establish complete military control over the territory where the aliens live, Colonel Mitchell explained. We use our technological advantages to demonstrate that resistance would be futile. Most intelligent species choose cooperation over destruction when presented with overwhelming force. Victor was impressed with the military approach. Colonel, these creatures are tactically sophisticated. They won't be easy to intimidate. Colonel Mitchell smiled. Mr. Kozlov, I appreciate your concerns, but my battalion has handled alien contact situations on 14 different worlds. We have weapons and tactics that these creatures have never seen before. Trust me, they'll cooperate once they understand the consequences of resistance. Administrator Walsh felt uncomfortable with the military's confidence, but she had already committed to this course of action. How long will the pacification process take? 48 hours, Colonel Mitchell replied. We'll establish a perimeter around the canyon systems and use sonic artillery to force the aliens out of hiding. Once they're in the open, we can negotiate from a position of strength. What none of the humans knew was that they were making plans that had already been anticipated by an intelligence far older and more sophisticated than they realized. Deep in the canyon systems of Haven Valley, in chambers that had been carved from the living rock thousands of years before humans arrived, the true inhabitants of the planet gathered in council. The creature Marcus had saved was young by the standards of its people. Its name, translated into concepts humans could understand, was Seeker of New Paths. It had been exploring the edges of human territory when the hunters wounded it. Its rescue by Marcus had been the first direct contact between the species in the 3 years since humans arrived on the planet. Seeker of New Paths stood before the Council of Elders and told the story of human kindness and human fear. It described Marcus's healing touch and Victor's traps. It explained the approaching military force and the danger to both species if violence began. The eldest of the council was ancient, even by the standards of a long-lived species. Its scales had turned the pure white color that came with great age and wisdom. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that conveyed not just words, but emotions and memories. We have watched the humans since they arrived, the eldest said. We have studied their technology, their culture, their capacity for both creation and destruction. We had hoped to remain hidden until we better understood their nature. The young one's experience changes our situation, another elder added. Some humans, like the healer Marcus, show wisdom and compassion. Others, like the soldiers coming to our valley, show only fear and aggression. Seeker of New Paths made a complex sound that expressed both hope and urgency. The healer human is imprisoned because he helped me. The soldier humans plan to attack our people because they fear us. If we remain hidden, the soldiers will search until they find our homes. If we reveal ourselves, they may attack because they do not understand us. The eldest considered this carefully. There is a third path. We show them enough truth to make them pause and think, but not so much that they feel completely powerless. We demonstrate that we are not helpless creatures they can dominate, but also that we do not wish to be their enemies. The council debated for hours, considering all the possibilities and consequences. Finally, they reached a decision that would change the future of both species on Haven Valley. We will reveal ourselves, the eldest declared. But we will do it in a way that shows our true nature. We are builders, not destroyers. We are ancient, not primitive. We are many, not few. And we choose cooperation over conquest. seeker of new paths, felt both excitement and fear at this decision. What about the healer human? He is in danger because he helped me. The healer will be protected, the eldest promised. He will be the bridge between our peoples if such a bridge is possible. His kindness to you will be remembered for generations. As the council session ended, the elders began implementing a plan that would show the arriving human soldiers exactly what they were truly dealing with in Haven Valley. The humans thought they were facing a small group of primitive creatures hiding in caves. They were about to discover they were sharing a planet with master engineers who had built an underground civilization while human ancestors were still learning to make fire. The next morning, Colonel Mitchell would begin his pacification campaign. By evening, he would understand that everything his species thought they knew about Haven Valley was wrong. Colonel Mitchell's battalion moved into Haven Valley at dawn, with the confidence of a military force that had never met its match. Atmospheric aircraft flew overhead in formation while ground troops advanced through the canyon systems in armored vehicles. The colonel had positioned his forces to drive the aliens out of the deep canyons and into open areas where they could be easily controlled. "Remember," Colonel Mitchell told his troops over the radio, "we're dealing with intelligent but primitive creatures. They may have some understanding of tactics, but they've never seen modern military technology. Show them what human engineering can accomplish, and they'll surrender quickly." The first indication that something was wrong came from the geological survey team. "Colonel," the lead surveyor called over the radio, "I'm getting some unusual readings from the canyon walls. The rock formations aren't natural. They show signs of artificial construction." Colonel Mitchell frowned. Victor's reports had mentioned that the aliens might use tools, but tool use was a long way from major construction projects. "Explain what you mean by artificial construction." "Sir, these canyon walls have been shaped and reinforced. The work is so old that natural weathering has made it look like natural rock formation, but the underlying structure is definitely engineered. We're not looking at caves, sir. We're looking at architecture." Before Colonel Mitchell could respond to this information, his lead scout team made contact with the enemy. Except, it was not what anyone expected. "Colonel," the scout team leader reported, "we have visual contact with the aliens. But, sir, I don't think these are the same creatures described in the reports." "Explain." "Sir, there are dozens of them. They're standing in formation on constructed platforms that appear to be built into the canyon walls. They're not hiding or running. They're just standing there, watching us." Colonel Mitchell activated his personal aircraft and flew toward the scout team's position. What he saw when he arrived made him understand that everything about this mission was wrong. The canyon walls were not natural rock formations. They were massive architectural structures that had been built to look natural from a distance. Platforms, walkways, and elaborate entrance structures were carved into the rock with a level of skill that rivaled the best human engineering. And standing on these platforms were creatures that were clearly not primitive animals. The aliens wore clothing that appeared to be made from woven metal threads. They carried tools that were obviously sophisticated technology, though Colonel Mitchell could not identify their function. Most importantly, they stood in organized groups that suggested military discipline and coordination. "All units, this is Colonel Mitchell," he said into his radio. "I need a full tactical reassessment. We are not dealing with primitive creatures hiding in natural caves. We are dealing with an established civilization with unknown technological capabilities." Victor's voice came over the radio from the main colony. "Colonel, are you saying these creatures have a military organization?" "I'm saying these creatures have a civilization that's been hidden from us since we arrived on this planet," Colonel Mitchell replied. "They've been watching and studying us while we assumed they were primitive animals." From his command position, Colonel Mitchell watched as more aliens appeared on platforms throughout the canyon systems. Not dozens, but hundreds, all of them standing calmly and watching the human military force with obvious intelligence and interest. Sir, his communications officer said, I'm receiving a transmission on multiple frequencies. The signal appears to be coming from the alien positions. Put it on speaker. The sound that came from the radio was the complex harmonic communication that Marcus had heard before, but this time it was accompanied by something else. Human words, spoken with careful pronunciation but obvious intelligence. Human military leader, the voice said, we request communication. We do not wish conflict between our peoples. Colonel Mitchell stared at his radio in shock. They speak English? We have listened to your people for 3 years, the voice continued. We have learned your language and studied your customs. We wish to discuss coexistence in peace. Before Colonel Mitchell could respond, one of his tactical officers pointed toward the main canyon entrance. Sir, look at that. A single alien was walking toward the human position. It moved with calm confidence, showing no fear of the heavily armed soldiers. As it approached, Colonel Mitchell could see that this alien was larger than the others, and its scales showed the pure white color of great age. The alien stopped about 50 yards from the human position and made a gesture that was obviously a request to approach and talk. Sir, the tactical officer said, what are your orders? Colonel Mitchell had been trained to handle many different types of alien contact situations, but he had never been trained for a situation where the aliens were obviously more sophisticated than initial intelligence had suggested. Stand down weapons, he ordered. We're going to talk. The white-scaled alien approached slowly, and when it was close enough to be heard clearly, it spoke in English that was better than some humans could manage. I am the eldest of the council. We have been the guardians of this world for longer than your species has existed. We welcome you to share our valley, but we do not accept your dominion over it. Colonel Mitchell felt a chill of understanding. How long have your people been on this planet? Our civilization has existed here for 12,000 of your years, the eldest replied. We watched your ships arrive. We studied your settlements. We decided to remain hidden until we could determine your intentions. And what have you determined about our intentions? The eldest's scales shifted to a pattern that Colonel Mitchell could not interpret. Your species shows great capacity for both wisdom and destruction. Some of your people, like the healer Marcus, demonstrate compassion and respect for life. Others demonstrate fear and aggression toward what they do not understand. Colonel Mitchell was beginning to realize that his military mission was not just unnecessary, but potentially catastrophic. Are you saying that your people have been studying us since we arrived? We have learned your language, your technology, and your social structures, the eldest confirmed. We could have driven you away at any time if we had chosen to do so. We chose instead to wait and see what kind of neighbors you would become. And now? The eldest made a sound that might have been equivalent to a sigh. Now we must choose between remaining hidden while you search for us with increasing aggression or revealing ourselves and accepting the risks of open contact. It was at this moment that Marcus Chen arrived at the scene. Marcus had been released from confinement by Administrator Walsh when it became clear that the situation was beyond anyone's previous experience. The colonial leadership needed someone who had actual experience communicating with the aliens. When Marcus saw the eldest, he immediately recognized the creature he had been thinking of as his friend. But this was not the wounded individual he had helped months ago. This was a young member of the most sophisticated species Marcus had ever encountered. Seeker of new paths, the eldest called in English. Come meet your friend. The creature Marcus had saved emerged from behind the larger group. Its scales turned the warm, blue-green color that Marcus knew meant happiness and affection. It approached Marcus and very gently touched his shoulder with one clawed hand, exactly as it had done on that first night. Marcus, the creature said in carefully pronounced English. Thank you for healing my wounds. Thank you for keeping the secret until we were ready to reveal ourselves. Marcus stared in amazement. "You learned English?" "I learned by listening to you work," the creature replied. "I learned to understand your kindness and your wisdom. I told my people that some humans could be trusted to choose cooperation over conquest." Colonel Mitchell watched this exchange and understood that everything his military training had taught him about alien contact was useless in this situation. These aliens had been studying humanity for years. They had made informed decisions about human nature. They had chosen to reveal themselves not because they were forced to, but because they believed peaceful coexistence was possible. "Eldest," Colonel Mitchell said formally, "I need to contact my superiors and completely revise our mission parameters. We came here prepared for a pacification operation against primitive creatures. We're facing a first contact situation with an advanced civilization." The eldest's scales shifted to silver, which Marcus had learned meant calm control. "Colonel Mitchell, we do not require you to change your mission. We require you to understand that your mission was based on incomplete information. We are not primitive creatures to be pacified. We are ancient inhabitants of this world who are willing to share it peacefully with new arrivals." "What do you want from us?" Colonel Mitchell asked. "We want what the healer Marcus showed us was possible," the eldest replied. "Mutual respect, cooperation, and the understanding that different forms of intelligence can work together for the benefit of both species." Administrator Walsh's voice came over the radio from the main colony. "Colonel Mitchell, what is the current situation?" Colonel Mitchell looked around at the hundreds of aliens standing calmly on their architectural platforms, at Marcus standing beside his alien friend, and at his own soldiers who were clearly trying to understand what they were seeing. "Administrator Walsh," he said into his radio, "I recommend that we cancel all military operations and begin immediate diplomatic negotiations. We're not dealing with a security threat. We're dealing with the native inhabitants of this planet, and they're offering us the chance to be neighbors instead of invaders." From his position among the alien delegation, Marcus heard the eldest make a complex harmonic sound that carried notes of satisfaction and hope. Around the canyon systems, hundreds of other aliens responded with their own harmonic calls. The sound echoed off the canyon walls like music, and Marcus realized he was listening to a song of welcome that had taken 3 years of careful observation for these people to decide they wanted to sing. Victor's voice came over the radio, tense and uncertain. "Sir, what about colony security? How do we know they won't change their minds and become hostile?" Marcus looked at his friend, whose scales had turned the warm blue-green of affection. "Victor," Marcus said over the radio, "they've had 3 years to study our weaknesses and plan attacks if that was their intention. Instead, they spent that time learning our language and deciding whether we could be trusted to share their world peacefully." The eldest moved closer to Colonel Mitchell. "Your hunter Victor asks a reasonable question about trust. Trust must be earned by both species through time and shared experience. We propose to begin with small steps: shared scientific research, cultural exchange, cooperation in projects that benefit both our peoples." Colonel Mitchell made a decision that would define the future of human presence on Haven Valley. "I'm officially changing our mission from pacification to first contact diplomacy. All weapons are to be secured. We're going to learn how to be neighbors." As the sun set over Haven Valley, humans and aliens stood together in the canyon systems that had hidden an ancient civilization for 12,000 years. The aliens' harmonic calls continued to echo off the canyon walls, and gradually, some of the human soldiers began to understand that they were hearing songs of celebration. Marcus stood between the two species, still amazed by how a simple act of compassion toward one wounded creature had led to the first peaceful first contact in human history. He looked at his friend, whose scales were now showing patterns of gold and silver that Marcus had never seen before. "What does that color pattern mean?" Marcus asked. Hope for the future, his friend replied. Hope that two very different species can build something together that neither could create alone. In the growing twilight, as human and alien voices began to mix in the first negotiations of a new age, Marcus smiled and realized that sometimes saving one life truly does save two entire worlds.